If you wanted an M-branded BMW SUV, but you didn't have over $100,000 to spend, you were crap out of luck. But now, BMW has stuck M badges on its smaller SUVs for the first time ever. The compact X3 and the SUV coupe X4 now have fully fledged M versions, and both sit well under the $100,000 mark. The X3 M here in gray is a little bit less expensive than the X4, pictured in red. You're going to get a little bit sporty styling, but you are going to compromise practicality on this X4. Both of these SUVs are available in standard M variants, but then they also have competition variants. So the standard models are both going to make 473 horsepower, 444 foot-pounds of torque, going out to all-wheel drive through 8-speed automatic transmissions. That's the same no matter which one of these you pick. Now, if you opt for the competition models available on both, that's going to up the power from 473 to 503. Now, the thing that's most interesting about these two cars to me is that both are powered by the same 3.0-liter inline-six twin turbocharged engine, codenamed the S58. And what's so special about this S58 motor is that this is the same engine that is going to appear on the next generation M3 and M4. So we're really going to be interested to check these out, because the last generation S55 was not my favorite. I didn't like the way it sounded too much, but we're going to see if these sound a lot better. Just from driving them around to park them here in the parking lot, I have a feeling they are. But let's first, before we get these out on the road and on the racetrack, let's go ahead and see some of the main differences between the two. Let's start with the X4. The X4 is the oddball of the two. The way you open it is kind of cool. They hide it in the BMW roundel here, which is kind of cool, so you just kind of poke that. You can also do it via the key. Now, I complain a lot about the storage being cut down on this car, but there is plenty back here, and you can fold down the rear seats. They do fold using these handy buttons here, so it is real easy to put a lot back here, but the X3 does have a lot more. Coming over here to the X3, we've got a much more standard SUV rear end. You don't get the cool roundel to open up the tailgate, whatever. But look at this. It goes all the way up to the roof, so you can store stuff if you have any tall items. And that's what an SUV is for. You might find that if you're carrying of boxes, you can't stack them up as high. In the X4, trust me, you're going to be able to put a lot more stuff, and it has the same folding seats practicality as the X4. But why yourself, especially when BMW is going to charge you more for the right of having less trunk space? I think that is just a bit weird. The interiors are actually cool, so let's go ahead and check those out now. So inside, we've chosen the X3. It really wouldn't matter which one you pick. You've got this nice leather wrap steering wheel with the M colors. You have these red M1 and M2 buttons. That's where you can program all of your traction control, sport, gearbox, all of those settings via here to make it a little bit easier on yourself. You do have what look like analog gauges, but they are actually screens. I can go ahead and put the car into one of its sport modes, and if we rev it, it sounds nasty. This is a really nice sounding inline-six engine. I do really have high hopes for the next generation M3 and M4 because this motor is fantastic. And the interior here is pretty nice as well. The X3 and X4 are not the highest on the BMW SUV hierarchy, but most of the materials in here are great. You do get some nice carbon fiber. That's probably part of a package. You do have BMW's iDrive controller, which is also touchscreen now, and you do have nice climate controls, heated and ventilated seats. So this is one of the more luxurious M cars that you can buy. Aside from a little bit of a stiff ride, which we're going to go find out on the road and on the track, this is actually a really nice place to spend time. So although most people will probably never do this with their X3 or their X4M, we are going to go take the X4M out on the racetrack. All right, so we're on the racetrack in the X4M competition, and now this is a weird one in my mind because we've got 503 horsepower. Over slow. We're going slow here. This is the Now go. There you go. All right. We are on the racetrack in the BMW X4M competition model. I've got some guys on the radio that may be chiming in here. This is something that I highly doubt you will do in your X3 or X4M. But if you're gonna go for the competition model, which is a little bit more power, bumps the power up from like 450 to 503, as we have in this one, you might take it on the racetrack, which is why I'm demonstrating this car's abilities. It is very weird to feel that there's just so much grip from the tires, but yet it's tall, so it gets you into some of these like skiddy situations where the car can kind of skip a bit. But once you find the balance and you get used to that body roll, it's real easy to navigate through the corners. You can cut corners because, of course, you're in an SUV, so you don't have to worry about bottoming out. Oh yeah, it just handles really well. And this B58 or S58 motor, inline-six twin turbo, is going to mirror what we're going to be getting in the next M3. But you can get it earlier if you're willing to go for one of these SUVs, and it is a great motor. I didn't really like the old S55 motor that was in the M3 and M4, but this one sounds really good, at least from the inside, and it sounds really good on the outside too, especially at idle. But this car is pretty good on the track. I highly doubt anybody is going to use it here, but let's go ahead and get out on the road with an X3M non-competition model, because I think that one is the one most people are going to end up using. The X3 and the X4M might come with the word competition on them, but their true domain is going to be out here on the road, which is why I wanted to bring an X3M out here now that I've already track tested the X4M, because this is where I think 99% of these cars are going to do most of their driving. And from my short time with this SUV, I can already tell you that even though it's got all of these different modes for the steering and the suspension, it goes from uncomfortable to more uncomfortable depending on which mode you're in. We've got the different suspension modes that can be configured individually of the other drive modes, which is sort of like an M car thing. You don't usually get to do that on other BMWs, but I'm already getting jounced around a little bit in comfort. I'm gonna go ahead and put just the suspension into Sport Plus, and now I'm really starting to feel all of the cracks in the road. This is definitely a stiff ride, so be sure that you really like a firm suspension before opting into this. Don't think that just because it's an SUV, it's going to be all soft and plush. Now, I haven't driven them back to back. I can't really tell you if this is as stiff as the Stelvio Quadrifoglio. I want to say that that car was also really, really stiff as well. I think this might be a little softer, although I could just be imagining that. I think maybe in its most comfortable setting, this X3M is a little bit more uncomfortable, less uncomfortable than the Stelvio. But in terms of all of the stuff you can touch, I mentioned this already, that the interior of this car is way nicer than the Alfa Romeo, so the time that you are going to spend in it is going to feel a lot better. Now, we've got different drive modes. We've got efficient, sport, sport plus. We've got steering modes, comfort, sport, sport plus. The steering's pretty heavy in all of the modes, although it really weights up and it feels really precise and really quick to turn. This is a high riding SUV, but it turns direction extremely well, especially in sport plus mode. You can get to the most aggressive settings a little quicker. We've got M1 and M2 buttons, which can be configured based on all of these settings. So if you want maybe the sportiest engine, but you want the comfort suspension with the Sport Plus steering, you can configure that to the M1 button here, so you can push it and get right there. I've had it configured to have everything as sporty as possible. So let's see how this thing goes from a stop as we come here to these train tracks. We're going to do a launch over some train tracks, so we're really going to get to feel if the suspension here is any good. Here we go. Oh, we have it in manual too. There we go. Yeah, the transmission's great. This S58, as I mentioned on the track, also really great. Pulls super, super hard, harder than any other X3 or X4 model. Now, the one we're driving has 503 horsepower. In competition, guys, I think you're going to be just fine with 473 in the normal one. And honestly, I've driven the M40i versions of both of these cars, and those are already incredibly fast. And this is an SUV, so I don't necessarily think that you need all of this power in the M model. There we go. Yeah, real good transmission. Can't give BMW enough credit for this ZF box. But yeah, I think this is just a little bit stiffer than like a normal everyday person might want. I think the non-competition models, and this is a competition, will be a little softer. So maybe drive them both back to back. And I think once you get it out on like a bumpy pothole road, you're gonna agree with me that the regular X3 and X4Ms are the ones to go with. All right, the X3M is going to be the cheaper of the two. It starts at $69,900 or $76,900 if you want to get the competition model. Now, frankly, I've only had the chance to drive the competition model, but it seems like the regular one is going to be plenty. Only really gets you from 0 to 60 from 4.1 to 4.0 for the competition. So for that 0.1 of a second, I say just save the extra $7,000 or so. The X4M is the more expensive of the two. Starts at $73,400 or $80,400 if you want the competition model. You might like the way the X4 is styled, and if so, maybe take the plunge and spend the extra money. But if it were my money, I would get the X3M. I know it's not the more exciting and eye-catching of the two, but you are going to get more space in the trunk and save a whole lot of money. So it is the one that I would get without the competition package. You might as well. You're going to be plenty fast with the regular one, so that's the one I recommend. Time for me to sum up my experiences driving the X4M and X3M on the track and out on the road. They're a bit stiff out on the road, as you'd expect a smaller M car to be, and it does feel a little bit large on the track, although it handles itself much better than I was really anticipating. My favorite car in this segment has been the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I think the Stelvio is more attractive than both of these cars, but these BMWs kill the Alfa Romeo when it comes to interior comfort and technology. So, and that's where you're going to spend most of your time anyway. So these do make a very strong, compelling case for themselves, even against the likes of the Stelvio and the GLC 63 AMG, which is also a spectacular but stiff SUV. Again, like I said, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not a huge fan of these SUV coupes. It's weird feeling like you're in a coupe, but also being tall and up on the road. So I still think the X3 is the one that I would recommend, and I'm not 100% sure why BMW felt the need to introduce competition versions of these cars, because they're SUVs. It's a bit silly. Nobody's really going to be competing with these, so whichever one you get, don't opt for the competition model, although it is a little bit quicker and a lot more powerful. Just get the regular one. You're going to be fine. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time.